Hi, it's Dwyer, keeping it free. .blogspot.com. You know, political correctness is distorting the news we get. How news is financed in the mainstream media really does dictate the content of the news you actually hear, right? The mainstream media is financed primarily by large corporate advertisers who don't want to be associated with anything that's edgy, anything that is not politically correct. And who could blame them? I'm not here attributing any kind of evil intent or malevolence to any corporate advertiser. Far from it. All I'm trying to do here is to point out structural bias and also to highlight some very important news that you may not have heard. Right? Understand these big corporate advertisers are simply trying to sell goods and services. So they're trying to connect with consumers. They don't want their goods and services associated with anything edgy or controversial, anything that might be construed as racist, sexist, homophobic, anything like that. They don't want to offend current cultural sensibilities. As an aside, let me just say there was a time when, of course, socially, racism, sexism, homophobia were more tolerated, right? And really, these large corporate advertisers are products of their time. These days, it's not fashionable to be racist or sexist or homophobic. And so, of course, these corporate advertisers don't want to be associated with any of that. So understand, when you hear news from the mainstream media, that news has already been filtered to remove out the edgy, politically incorrect stories that might be true and that might actually be relevant to some of the biggest issues in American life, right? In other words, the politically incorrect parts, even when important, have been somewhat watered down, somewhat de-emphasized. Now, let's talk about a major story. And you have to ask yourself, as you watch this video, whether or not you had heard this before, because it actually concerns our presidential election, right? There's a bevy of coverage. We've just seen the second presidential debate. The first one was watched by north of 60 million people, right? And so you can imagine this is a huge story that concerns our governance, right? But yet, it was only by me scouring around non-mainstream media sources that I stumbled upon 4 different polls, and they're credible polls. The Gallup poll, the Monmouth University poll, a Fox News poll, and Pew Research Center poll. 4 different polls, one of them Gallup, that all show that Mitt Romney right now is winning the white vote by more than 20%. In other words, he's winning the white vote by a level we haven't seen since 1984 and Ronald Reagan, right? Now, this is extremely relevant to this presidential campaign. It's very important because it highlights the divide in America. Not only does it give an indication of what might happen on Election Day, but it also highlights the divide in America. And if you're surprised at the number, it's not double digits. It's a 20% white vote gap. Then really you have to ask yourself, why am I not hearing this on NBC, ABC, CBS? In fact, doesn't the absence of this news from those networks actually somewhat challenge their credibility in presenting a full picture of what is happening in America right now? Right? Let me also point out too that it's really stunning. The political correctness is really off the page, because I've read several articles, I've seen several reports on mainstream media about the gap in the Latino vote. Right? Barack Obama's running away with the Latino vote. I've seen several stories about the gap in the black vote. I think most know that Barack Obama is winning about 90% of the black vote. Right? We're even hearing about the Jewish vote. But yet, talk of the white vote is too edgy. Right? And so you're hearing about gaps on one side that favor one candidate. You're not hearing about the other side of the equation. It's something we should all be aware of. I'm not saying to stop political correctness. No. My message is a little bit more market-based than that. All I'm saying is political correctness belongs in the dialogue among the other ideas in the marketplace of ideas. I think voters can really only act on the information they have, right? And you just need to realize that you have to dig for the information. You cannot assume that the mainstream media, financed by big corporate advertisers, is giving you the whole story. Let me also point out, too, that we can't even discuss things that we don't know about that aren't being reported, right? A lot of censorship doesn't come from the government. We need to think about news, how it's financed, and how that impacts the content that's being delivered to you. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at keepingitfree.blogspot.com. I'm not even going to put a spin on what the white vote gap means for the parties. It's up to you to decide. But just understand, this is a meaningful gap, that needs to be explored, right? It also could impact, quite frankly, several states where there aren't a lot of minorities. We're talking right now about an Obama firewall in places like Wisconsin and some other states. And, certainly news like this should be front and center as people literally talk about and assess what could happen on election day. Let me also point out, too, that Barack Obama had some success with whites in 2008. So to the extent that Barack Obama has lost a portion of the white community in the intervening 4 years, shouldn't that be something that's being discussed now within 3 weeks of the actual election? Shouldn't that be discussed now before the final presidential debate? Shouldn't we be asking ourselves what exactly has happened in the last 4 years to lead to this greater than 20% gap among this demographic group? Let me hear from you. I hope you leave a very robust comment section to this video. And I do hope you visit us at keepingitfree.blogspot.com and wealthspinning.com. Let me go one step further too and understand I'm neither a Romney supporter or an Obama supporter. I'm just an entrepreneur. So I do run a site that says votemittromney.blogspot.com and also morebarack.blogspot.com. My goal is to just attract viewers and to attract advertisers, right? Make no mistake about it, right? But I'm actually a Gary Johnson supporter. And so really, my agenda here isn't to further the campaign of either, big party political candidate. It's really just to underline and underscore that, in fact, the news you're getting from several news outlets isn't the whole picture. And that Americans really need to understand that as they gather news to make big decisions like who to pick for the next president of the United States. Thanks for watching.